You're watching TelecomTV's exclusive coverage of the Wi-Fi Global Congress event from London. And I'm pleased to say I'm joined now by Lord Way of Shoreditch. Thank you for joining us on TelecomTV. First question I have to ask though is, what is a member of the House of Lords doing at the Wi-Fi industry event?
Well, curiously, I actually started my career in technology as a consultant at McKinsey's technology practice and ended up during my time there actually specialising in mobile technology. So it's very interesting to be coming back. And then now in my recent role, as Lord Way of Shoreditch, I live in East London, in sort of close to the heart of Tech City. I'm surrounded by the kind of Internet of Things, entrepreneurs and innovation that they've been talking about at this conference. So it would seem odd, but actually it's actually a good fit, and it's good to, in a way, be home again.
Well, you mentioned that you're from Shoreditch. You live in the heart of London, the real heart of the city of London. Cities are changing. London in particular is changing, and connected technologies seem to be playing a very important part in this evolution.
Yeah. I think there's both positives and some challenges with the changes that new technologies, apps, IoT is bringing to cities. We're seeing a lot of people moving into cities, not just here in London, but in the Bay Area, all around the world, because apps like Uber and others that make life more convenient are more effective or prevalent, if you like, in dense urban areas. So we're seeing young people moving, the rise of hipster culture, and that's fantastic. But of course, that's bringing new pressures in terms of housing costs, in terms of even the cost of coffee, for example, in my part of town has gone up considerably. And one of the things I'm very interested to see what we can do is to say, how do we bring those positive benefits to bear, not just for those coming in, but also for those who already live in areas like Shoreditch.
What's the solution then? What should we be doing?
Well, it's a complex issue. We can't bury our heads in the sand and say no to all this technological change. I think we have to embrace it. But I think we have to recognise, first of all, that it will bring disruption. So a lot of work that I've been doing recently is looking at the impact of new technologies on jobs, particularly jobs which are historically less advanced skills, more what we might call blue-collar kind of jobs. I think one of the stats recently was that in the UK, about 37% of all job categories are in some way going to be disrupted by new technologies such as big data, IoT. 47% in the US, I'm sure in other countries similar types of figures. So we've got to think about the jobs impact and then really go, well, what's IoT going to do in terms of creating new kinds of jobs, particularly ones, because of the physical nature of IoT and sort of Wi-Fi technologies, that will create new opportunities, and how do we transition people and help support people moving away from the ones which will be less labour intensive into ones which will require more human input, maybe not the PhD level always, but ones which will actually be accessible to people.
How much of all this change has been driven by communities themselves, and how much is kind of top-down, foisted upon communities by the municipal authorities?
I think government and municipal authorities generally have been playing catch-up more. First of all, recognising the kind of huge economic and sort of industrial benefit to embracing these new technologies, both in terms of smart cities, in terms of just economic development. I think we're only really at the beginning of recognising the challenges that are coming in terms of the kind of labour market restructuring. Cities and industry has recognised that technology startups creates lots of jobs. I think Eric Schmidt famously said recently that he believes that for every coding job that's created, you get 7 new jobs, sort of ancillary jobs that are created. And there's no doubt, and the jury's still out in terms of all this disruption. Will it create net new jobs overall, or will there be a reduction or an increase? I'm interested in the quality of the jobs. I'm interested in the fact that will all the 7 jobs that are created mainly be less secure jobs, maybe doing things like cleaning. We've got Uber drivers now in countries, in London and cities like it. But in 5, 10, 20 years' time, when cars may be driving themselves, what will happen to the Uber drivers? How's this going to play out, not just in the short term, where we may have an economic boom as a result, or at least save a lot of money, but how's it going to look in the long term? And if in the far, far distance, when artificial intelligence may actually mean that a lot of the work, even our work, I hope not, may become more commoditized, and sort of we would politicians may go on TaskRabbit one day to do a speech or something for $5 an hour, whatever the going rate is. Really, there's a question there about who owns the technologies? Who owns the robots? Effectively, the capital assets that technology is developing. Will it be a world like perhaps the Jetsons, where everybody actually has something that cooks for them, that creates the daily necessities, or will it be a world in which perhaps somebody else owns most of the machinery and we work for the machinery in a kind of more dystopian? And probably the reality is somewhere in between. But I think if we can go into it with our eyes open, we're probably in a better position than without.
And underpinning all of this is broadband. It's pleasing to see more and more governments supporting broadband rollouts and deployment, especially here in the UK. But are we doing enough to encourage it on a global scale in terms of regulation and best investment practices, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could never get enough broadband. I'm involved in a co-working maker kind of IoT space in London. We're also opening all over the world. So I'm seeing firsthand the challenges of broadband, and the real need has become sort of like water, a kind of utility for those in the kind of tech industry and those in startups. I think there's always more that government can do. Certainly here in the UK, there's been a big focus on making sure we can have rural broadband and increasing the speeds in dense urban areas. I think there's a lot to be done, but whether in terms of cellular networks, but also in kind of the Wi-Fi world and the kind of other technologies to make it better in terms of power usage, reliability, resilience. I mean, it's all very well having a world in which IoT makes life more convenient, but if it does fail, we hope not, what do we do? Do we forget how to drive cars to do ordinary human farming? So in a funny way, I think that there's a need to both be more analog as humans in an IoT world, to cope with, and to add value, because it's going to be the analog where you create value, the stuff the machines can't do, as well as to build out this infrastructure, make it more reliable, high speed, ubiquitous in every way. And if we can do that, then it'll be a very interesting world. Yeah.
You keynoted here at the Wi-Fi Global Congress this morning. What was your message to the audience, and how do you feel that the WBA, the organisers, are supporting the industry?
I was looking at the social impact of IoT, so a lot of what I've just said about the kind of job disruption and the need to help people get into self-employment in IoT-related industries. One of the things that we're seeing in this wave of technological development with the kind of maker revolution, if you like, is the rise of potentially more jobs that are more accessible to people who like to use their hands or be outdoors, be in the physical world. So if the robot or the drone falls out the sky, someone's got to pick it up. If the 3D printer gets blocked up, someone's got to get involved and help clean it. And this creates more entry-level opportunities for people who might not have been able to benefit from the recent tech boom, where it was much more ultimately about people who can code, people who can do graphical design with degrees or PhDs in computer science and so on and so forth. So really what I've been saying is, well, how do we get ahead of the curve this time around and say, there is change coming, how do we help people, help transition people from those sectors where there'll be less labour required of a certain kind, and find pathways for people. One of the initiatives I've been involved with, called Maker Wharf, has been piloting an approach to actually incubate new IoT jobs which do require that kind of mix of skills, and to work to create a scenario a bit like an incubator where you've got hosted companies creating a kind of social business that's sustainable but which can replicate and scale, and ultimately, hopefully one day, in a neighbourhood near you, will provide a place where people can go and find out what's going to happen, almost like going back to Churchill's idea of the labour exchange, but for the 21st century, and find out how they can get involved in really exciting new trades of the future, whether it's a plumbing business that's using 3D printers, or whether it's a tailor business that's thinking about wearables and knows all your measurements from the various technologies that we're using. Innovating the future jobs to replace the ones that are going to go, and balancing out the kind of inequality challenge that we have as tech continues to rise.
Fascinating, and it's a subject we should be talking more about. Lord Way, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.